27.
26.
25 seconds.
24. 23.
22 seconds.
21 seconds.
20 seconds. 19.
18. 17 seconds.
16.
15 seconds.
14.
13 seconds.
12. 11.
10 seconds.
9.
8. 7. 6. Copy.
5 seconds.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Soul Space Chapter, the show where we boldly go into discussing Star Trek's Strange New Worlds. Today we'll be discussing the fourth episode of this new series called Memento Mori. And joining me today is my friend Vanessa. Welcome, Vanessa.
Hello, thank you for having me. I have a YouTube channel called I Love Bad Star Trek, and I am very excited to talk about this episode with you. There was a lot that happened.
Cool. So first question, do you think it was too early for the Gorn to return? Do you think they should have instead come back in the later episode of Strange New Worlds?
I honestly think that there was, a hinting of it through La'an's sharing of her backstory. I think they paced it in such a way there was a bit of piecemealing of certain bits of information. So this was built up to. I don't think this was too soon or anything like that. So I think it was perfectly timed, personally.
Yeah, because she spoke about the Gorn, I think, in the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
So in this episode, how well do you think the depiction of the Gorn links to how the species is portrayed in past Star Trek productions, not just that first episode? And were you disappointed that we didn't actually get to see a Gorn?
I wasn't disappointed that we got to see the Gorn in terms of the fact that we never visually see them. They never show up on the view screen. What we do see of them is the trap that they set with the hologram. I honestly think that was its strength. I think it was a bold choice to have no visual of the Gorn on there. In terms of how it compares with Arena, I'm fine with it being retconned. I'm fine with Arena. Just, the fact, the Gorn being introduced by that episode, but I'm fine with any sort of rewriting of history. I don't think it rewrote history though, because there is no contact made. It's just a blind battle. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. But also, I'm glad that it didn't appear in a way, because I think it would have probably welcomed or brought about so many nitpicks and fans saying, "Oh, how does this compare to not only the Gorn in the Arena, but the one in the Mirror Darkly Part 2 in Enterprise?" And also I'm not sure how much in this episode in Memento Mori, you hear clicking noises, and how does that match up with what we've heard? It doesn't. I don't recall clicking noises.
Yeah,
like
that sounds very Alien franchise to introduce audio elements before visual.
Yeah, good point.
But there was a sort of dark, almost Aliens sort of aesthetic vibe here. But yeah, I think the choices around the Gorn are good.
What do you think of the production elements of this episode in general, like the music and directing?
I think the music and the pacing of it, the visuals, the way that the damage was shown on here is in line with other episodes of Star Trek that sort of effectively, to me, show damage. Things aren't just magically fixed in the next scene. We see my favorite part, honestly, in terms of visuals, is the very last shot of the Enterprise as it's flying away, and you see all the phaser fire and all the damage that it took for being in the brown dwarf and near the black hole and everything. I think visually it was extremely effective, and it was very good at building tension with the music as well.
Yeah, I'd love the end of the trailer the end of the teaser, or it's also called cold opening,
Mhm.
where like Laan says it's the Gorn, and you see like the spinning Gorn ship
Right.
just appearing. I love the music at that point because it,
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's like really emphasized in the overall mix of the sound. Um, yeah, there's a few bits like that. I thought, well, that's really cool. In fact, like I remember like a scene just before that, and I was thinking today, it sounds quite like the Jaws theme a bit.
Yeah.
I think, which was based on apparently the Doomsday Machine music. So I thought it was
Wow. Okay. Full
cool.
circle.
Yeah. And talking of full circle, I really like there's where the camera starts off in the shutter pod, Galileo with Laan and Spock, and the camera like twists around. I thought it's
Mhm.
like a cool touch as well. But yeah, I just thought like there's so many. I thought like seeing the Enterprise like skimming off the accretion disk of the black hole and stuff like that. I think like I just really love this episode.
Yes.
um,
Agreed.
how well does Pike perform under pressure? Do you think he's getting super reckless because he knows his future, and is he taking unnecessary gambles with his ship and crew?
I think um he was taking his crew seriously. I think he really is good at trusting the judgment of his fellow crew members while also, in the conversation with La'an, checking them on their, the culture that they're cultivating and the kind of emotional vibe that he's trying to maintain. We don't want to get hopeless, and we don't want to focus on how evil these things are to you. We're sort of like just trying to survive, and we need to maintain hope. I think he was very deliberate in his decisions. I think his choice to go into the brown dwarf, to sort of, go into a place where it would very clearly put the Enterprise in danger, was a very calculated move. I don't think he was acting in a way that was going to put them into danger any more than he would put. I don't think it was filtered through I'm going to die, so I'm just going to take everyone with me kind of vibe. But he was very focused on surviving and getting out and getting as much of his crew as possible out as well.
Mhm. I think it. I like that this episode he talks about like miracles. Um,
Hmm.
I think I'm sure like there's one scene where he says like let's let the if the brown dwarf wants to destroy us, let's let it. He says
Hmm.
something to that effect, and I think that's quite risk taking.
Yeah, you're right. That is sort of a
But as you say, I think it's calculated.
yes. Yes,
Um,
like he knew he must have made the as they were going into the brown dwarf and that one Gorn ship was crushed, he sort of showed his hand and said, "This is why we're doing this, because they are relentless, and so we're going to lead
mhm,
them into a trap ourselves." So that made sense.
mhm. Um, does it make sense to you when Lan finds out about Michael Burnham?
Um, I think a mind meld. I think one thing that is really great that they showed about the mind meld is that it's a mutually intimate affair, that you are not just going into somebody else's mind, that the person might find something out about the person performing the mind meld as well.
Hmm.
So I think it makes sense for La'an to be vulnerable, and then Spock to also in his own way be vulnerable as well. So I thought that was actually a way for them to connect. uh Earlier in the episode she was sort of chastising him for like, you don't never can you just speak plain English? And I think part of it is that she sees his intellectualizing as a wall, and through the mind meld there is no more walls, so they can finally have like a one-on-one conversation on something other than work. And I thought that was a really touching moment, but I don't think that I don't think that I see any sort of canon breaking or anything like really going to mess up the flow of the show by introducing that element or anything like that. I think it was just a personal moment.
I wondered if might be like due to her genetically engineered ancestry in a way.
Mhm. That's a very valid point. Maybe she, as an augment, she has the ability to sort of um take a mind meld as an opportunity to sort of reverse the roles, if
Mhm.
that's a factor there.
Mhm. So in an odd routine, Una has been captured or a persona non grata for a few episodes. So how do you feel about this being yet another episode where she's out of commission?
I I'm a little disappointed, honestly. I really want to see Pike and Una work together to solve a problem. That's sort
Yeah.
of, the joy in watching things like TNG, or, not that I'm looking for the exact same thing, obviously, but we've seen a lot of Una being strong and, ignoring her own pain and sacrificing herself for the well-being of others, as you saw with her, like, saying, "Oh, I'll donate plasma," as she's bleeding out. But I would like to see how they balance each other out. And it's strange to me that this keeps happening, that, like, she's either captured or injured, or they're separated somehow, and I'm not sure why they're doing that.
Yeah, I find that interesting. Um, Regarding Una, basically, like, what do you think the subtext of Mabanga giving his blood to her was?
I think it was a callback to the previous episode where Una sort of, well, decided to look the other way when Mabenga kept a child in his medical
Mm,
transporter at the expense of power that they needed at the moment, or the filtration system that would have saved them from getting sick. I think it's his way of saying, like, if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, kind of thing. Even,
mhm.
yeah, I think, and also it seems to imply to me that they have a deeper connection than necessarily the show is wanting to let us in on quite yet.
It reminded me of like Spock and Sarek in Journey to Babel.
Mhm.
It was another blood transfusion. Um,
Mhm.
and also, like, I've recently been like researching the roots of Mbango, basically. Um, where I watched like the first episode that he's in A Private With the War, and I
Mhm.
was like his accent was clearly like seems more American, I think, than in Strange New Worlds. I think where it seems more like African. But then like I went on Memory Alpha and read like the roots of the character is that he was written in an episode that wasn't produced called Shoal, Shawl, something like that.
Mhm.
Shol. Um,
Mhm.
and in it, it described him as being Ugandan from Uganda. So I thought like
Mhm.
Strange New Worlds is really keeping, I think, quite consistent with like those original roots of the character, rather
Right.
than how he was ultimately portrayed in the original series, which I found quite interesting.
Right. I really hope that they flesh out his character a little bit more, other than having this one sort of agenda, for
Mm.
sure.
How did Laan and Spock scoot away from the monster Gorn ship without the Gorn being curious about the human ship, sending a message to them and investigating or capturing them?
That's one thing that could easily be seen as a bit of a hole, a quibble. I don't know. Because when I watched that scene again, I'm like, how are they just not getting shot? I don't
Uh,
understand what's
I've noticed
is
as
it
well.
just the brown dwarf interfering with their sensors. It's sort of like I shouldn't have to fill in the blank. It made me fill in the blank that a show shouldn't.
Like regarding the shuttlecraft, I've noticed some people have been commenting that like if the Enterprise and the Gorn ship were like nearly being crushed in the
Right.
atmosphere, like
How did
for
the shuttle not get crushed? Right.
yeah. But also like rewatching the episodes today, I found it's interesting that there is a scene cut because it cuts to Hammer and Uhura in the cargo bay. So like anything could happen. Maybe they were captured but got away, a bit like I remember Chakotay is basically captured by the Kazon, for example, in Voyager, but soon gets away. Like
Right.
doesn't mean that they're gonna have like PTSD or whatever that they'll have to cope with for the rest of the entire
Right.
life.
Right.
Necessarily.
And it's kind of a shame because you would think that La'an facing the Gorn at that close proximity, even if it's with Spock, is a very poignant moment. But we were robbed of that, and I think that's kind of a bummer. Like we got the mind meld where she obviously sort of faced down her fear in a little bit of a more proactive way, and I was appreciative of that because you have characters like Tasha Yar who just have this one thing in their past that they're inflicted with repeatedly without being given the opportunity to work through it, and finally we have a security officer that faces down her past and does something to move past it.
Well, I thought it's interesting to compare the mind meld that you're talking about with earlier in the episode where she says to number one, I'm not going to let a doctor into my mind. I thought, that's interesting. She does let Spock in.
Yeah. I guess she changed her mind about that.
Well, I think maybe two things that she sees that it may be important for the mission that they're on,
right?
And maybe like she personally is getting closer with Spock,
Right. There's a certain amount of trust that you need with somebody to allow them to do that for sure.
Yeah. Whereas I don't know how she feels about M'Benga or.
Right.
It could just be like a doctor who she's never met before.
Right.
Said,
I mean, she sort of did ask that they don't give her any painkillers. And it's odd because Una kind of did the same thing too. She's like, with the gas that they were going to give her, she's like, no, I don't want that. And eventually she acquiesced, but it's just an interesting theme for women to be like, I don't want painkillers. Like, not sure why they keep pushing that.
Did it strike you as odd that Pike uses teachable moments with La'an during the crisis, like it's just a training mission and not a conflict between species that could be instrumental in broadening the Federation's understanding of the Gorn and their tactics?
I think he was kind of acting in the moment to sort of course correct in terms of what her demeanor was, just because if they were going into battle or trying to strategize around these people and she's just going to go off about how they're evil and they're going to get us and this and that, I think it's a distraction. I think he's trying to get her to focus. And also I'm fine with having a moment of crisis to step aside and have those kind of conversations, because I think we've gotten a lot of Star Trek where we don't have time for those kind of conversations and where they're sort of necessary. I think it can break up the tension a little bit. I think it could sort of break the spell of suspense if they do that too much. But I did think it was a good, solid managerial choice to say, listen, we can't we can't just have you going off about these aliens forever. Like, we kind of need to focus on the task at hand.
Mhm. I've noticed online there's been people like complaining like in this episode the Gorn are portrayed as so evil and stuff, and they're not necessarily in Arena. But I think because there's a claim made in Arena that Cestus 3 was a Gorn colony that the Federation then like unknowingly invaded, I think. But like you don't know, like that's not entirely substantiated claim. It may still be true. At the end of this episode, you've got lines where Pike and Laan on the bridge, like they say, Laan says, "What about next time they're opening up like new hatching or new hunting grounds, something like that." That
Right.
would work, I think, quite well with what happens in Arena. I think, as well as other people have commented online, like it's not. I don't think it's necessarily that they are portrayed as evil in Memento Mori. They're characterized as evil by Laan, where she's had
Right.
obviously horrible experiences with them.
Right. I think I've come across this comment as well about the Gorn being demonized. I think it's really meant to be instructive about how even in the time of the Federation, there are still people who hold prejudices and biases based on their experience with just a few folks. And it makes sense that you would have somebody hold hateful feelings towards somebody who, killed most of the people that they know. Like, there's Miles O'Brien with the Cardassians, his experience with them, or Spock with the Romulans. Like, this is like a very classic Star Trek thing to show somebody with prejudices based on those experiences.
Or even more like styles with Romulans. And I was thinking of like Archer with the Zindi. I'm sure there's like really quite xenophobic characters that are involved in Terra Prime at the end of Enterprise and stuff like that as well. Why do you think Laan used the term crew person rather than crewman or crew, or even just crew member?
I don't think it could be that they didn't know exactly who it was. So they didn't want to, misgender the person in the moment. They got sucked down into space. Maybe we need to, find out who that was before making decisions. Yeah, I noticed that as well. I've never really heard the term before. I didn't think it was like, I don't think it was a PC thing. I think it was just a matter of not having enough data to gender the person correctly, or maybe they don't have a gender. Who knows? It was noticeable, but not something that like took me out of the episode.
Well, I assumed that it may have been PC. And I think because crewman obviously isn't the gender is the person
Right.
that we're talking about, but also I think like it just mix it up a bit from having like crew member, the word crew member used all the time.
Yeah, that to me is a little more common, crew member rather than crew person.
But I think it's just a bit of variety. I think it's cool.
I don't think I've ever heard crew woman either. So yeah.
Earlier in the episode, Transporter Chief Kyle was friendly with one passing crew member. Why did the production make a point of that crew member being the same one who he finds to evacuate? I don't think I can't remember that scene.
And there was just a scene where they're just passing in the hallway while Captain Pike is giving his spiel about their version of Memorial Day.
Okay, I've never noticed.
Yeah, it's like a really quick thing. I think it's fine to foreshadow things like that. And obviously, I mean, they were sort of walking past each other as he was saying, we lose people when we lose somebody that we're close to, it's devastating. So it could be, sorry, I have an orange cat. It could be that they were sort of implying that these folks were maybe more than acquaintances. So that like it would be a relationship that's severed. It's not just some random person getting sucked into space. It's somebody that means something.
So did you notice how easy it was for Kyle to be pushed through the closing bulkhead doors by that crew person, by
Yeah.
an
I
injured, barely standing crew member?
Yes. Yeah, it was kind of far away too, and I don't quite know why he did that instead of pushing as he's running, like why couldn't he save himself in the moment too? I'm not.
I think your opinion completely differs from mine now. Because to me, it doesn't look like much of a distance.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting.
Maybe he was just like, I gotta go.
And also, I did think like maybe that other crew person has like super strength in his arms, but it doesn't mean that he necessarily have it in his legs or whatever.
Yeah, and it was kind of a Indiana Jones moment, but I'm puzzled by the decision to sort of push someone through rather than guide them along as you're going through yourself. Like this, they didn't need to lose that guy.
Were you reminded of any particular submarine warfare movies or anything like that with
Yeah,
how the battle played out?
yeah, as discussed before, like down Periscope, absolutely, where you're kind of in the dark. They're relying on radar for visuals on the folks rather than using the view screen or anything like that. So you just have this sort of boo boo, like the same thing with the submarines, and they're going in, flying into like crush depths, yeah, it really reminded me of like down Periscope where they're completely trying to run silent and wait for their enemy to like get into a position where they're manually dropping weapons. And I thought that was really effective. It's like kind of Hunt for Red October or down Periscope kind of thing.
So when I interviewed the director recently for an article on Warp Factor Track, he didn't mention down Periscope. He did mention Hunt for Red October and Run Silent, Run Deep. The enemy, was it the enemy below? Something like that. Quite a few. Yeah, like I asked him specifically, like which particular movies like influenced this the direction.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. As well, he mentioned Balance of Terror and Wrath of Khan were track productions.
Right.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting as well that in this episode, Ortega's used this like exact same term as in Balance of Terror, which is blip.
Yes. Yeah. There was a very. It did kind of feel like a callback to Balance of Terror, at least its pacing. And this sort of flying blind into a battle where you don't really know what their strengths are, kind of thing.
So, how is the theme of death, do you think, explored in this episode?
Well, you have from the very beginning, Pike encouraging his crew members to pay respect to people that they've served with before. You have Hemmer saying that he's not afraid to face death, that he's part of a faction of certain Andorians that are especially not afraid of death, if I'm not mistaken. And with Uhura, she, Andorian, his sort of faction mentioned that he, like it's fine to lose your life if you've found out the meaning of it, and Uhura's having to respond with, I'm not sure what it is yet, so she's not ready to die. I
thought it's
think
interesting as well in that scene that he says like his purpose as he sees it is to fix things.
Right.
Like I thought, like
right, that's very practical.
prime
Cool.
Yeah, what prime characteristic they have of the chief engineer.
Yes, you would want that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a way to express finality and new beginnings as well, with Laan and her trauma having to do with the Gorn and having to face it down and having to go into battle. Because in the beginning, when they first engage with the Gorn, or the Gorn attack them, she completely kind of loses her cool to Pike, yelling at him that it's the Gorn. And I think she's having to push past it in order to focus at the task at hand. So there's a bit of a death of a certain kind of reactivity, I guess. That it's not just a past trauma; it's a present issue.
I think that scene that you were talking about, where she's like insisting to Pike, it's the Gorn, sort of reminds me of like in the first episode of Discovery, where Burnham was like, it's the Klingons.
Right. Did you and this isn't a question that we've collated or anything, but I have a question for you. Do you find Laan like hyper capable? Do you find her unrealistically aware of the risk factors at hand without a lot of data? Do you think she's acting on things in a way that writing wise don't make any sense? Or
What was the question?
Oh, do you think Laan in this episode is unrealistically hyper capable? Like, does she have some sort of godly foreknowledge or anything like that? Or do you think she's making...
I don't think so. Apart from perhaps when she says in the mind meld, you lost someone, a sister, and that to come to that conclusion of it being a sister, I thought was maybe like, how does she know that?
Right.
But then, well, they were in the mind meld, and she did have the opportunity to sort of psychically read his mind, as it were, due to that and stuff. So, yeah.
So that was the only moment that you thought, okay, Laan, that seems that's a little pushing it. Okay.
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a favorite scene in this episode?
Honestly, I think towards the very end, when there's that tense moment where they're not sure if Hemmer and Ahura made it, and they're trying to wait for them to respond. And I know that's sort of a cliched way to sort of draw out the drama and the tension and everything, but the look of relief on the crew's faces, like these people matter. This isn't a crew of red shirts, and it's not the way the culture that Pike is cultivating is that these folks are friends. They're not just crew people. So I liked that it mattered that they were back. I liked even the one crew person that got sucked out into space. It mattered to him. I appreciated that.
I think, as some fans have pointed out, like there's, on the whole, seems to be like more red shirts on the bridge of the Enterprise than in like TOS, because the crew people sitting at the helm and navigation consoles are wearing red rather than like gold.
Did you see Una's nails? They have gold stripes on them. When she's like holding her mask to her face, she has like a manicure with like gold stripes. I thought that was a nice touch.
I think it's cool you noticed that.
Yeah, there's actually a Twitter account that chronicles her nails.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So I think my favorite scene is probably where they find the... I think I've got two, really. The one I mentioned earlier, where you see like the spinning Gorn ship and lands like it's the Gorn, but also like when they find on the colony the stretch marks across the ground. I thought that was cool.
That was a very striking visual. We don't get a lot of blood and guts in Strange New Worlds, so to show that was very striking.
And I think like we have had like, I guess that's partly like where the Wrath of Khan might have influenced an episode, because there's
Hmm.
like blood and guts, with all the
Hmm.
Sati eels and stuff, and in certain other Star Trek productions there have been like blood and guts moments, like
Hmm.
conspiracy and stuff like that.
Like in Discovery, there was like a few episodes in the
Mm.
security, the weapons officer got eaten by that the water bear. It was like it felt very Game of Thrones, like they're gone. So
Yeah.
it's good to sort of ease that element in without hitting someone over the head with it.
Hmm. Do you think Uhura and Tamara were the best characters to carry the B plot?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that like Una Uhura and Hemmer have things to get from each other. It's a very Star Trek-y trope to put two people stuck in a situation and they have to sort of like work together to get out. I don't think that's necessarily like like groundbreaking in itself, but I thought it was really good to have somebody as sort of closed off as Hemmer connect with Uhura, who was just new and trying to help.
Mm.
And they gained a respect for each other, and I appreciated that.
I agree with everything you said in response to this question, but I think like the scene that you cited as your favorite, I think is my least favorite in the episode.
Mm.
But I don't think that Uhura and Tamara were perhaps the best characters to have in the final scene, because like if you know like the original series, Uhura will survive. So I felt there was no suspense there of, oh, maybe these characters, because we don't know them, might not actually survive. But then I was
Right.
thinking today, well, not, but even then, like, you've got Hammer, who's like been promoted as one of the show's main characters. So people
Right.
could still potentially be like, well, we know they're not going to be killed off. It's extremely
Right.
unlikely, because it's not like a series premiere like happened in Discovery with
Mhm.
the captain being killed off,
Yeah, I
for
guess I'm
example.
because of shows like Discovery or things like that, I'm so used to like potentially having a main character just kind of taken away. So I'm
Mm.
like Hemmer at least, because he was even talking about not being afraid of death. So I was afraid that maybe he was going to be gone. And I'm
Oh,
so relieved that wasn't the case.
yeah. Yeah, I think with this episode, it was like really ingrained in me that like Hammer's probably my favorite character in the show.
Hmm.
Because I do like the scenes that he's in previous episodes, but I don't think he's like as fleshed out as much
Yeah,
as he is here. So yeah, I like that aspect.
right.
Um, Regarding like characters and stuff like that, uh, do you think they can keep up the excellent balance between a character's personal experience driving the plot forward and technobabble science saving the day? Like, should they be maintaining both in every episode, do you think, or might it be better to mix up the ratio between character-based plots and sciencey stuff?
I don't really see them as at war with each other to begin with. I
Mm.
don't see those two components like really overpowering one another. Maybe the science sort of being stretched past the limit of believability is part of what makes Star Trek Star Trek. It's not like warp drive, it's not a thing. We know that, like we kind of know that going into it, and what makes it work obviously is going to be sort of nonsense too. So I don't really see like the science of it being leaned into at the expense of character development. I think so far there's been a nice balance of stuff going on, and I feel like I know these characters pretty well,
Mm.
at least the ones that they've focused on. So I think they're doing that ratio just fine so far.
I think so as well, but I don't think every single episode needs to rely or even feature to such a degree science stuff.
Hmm.
'Cause I
Right.
think like particularly the episodic nature of Strange New Worlds, I think allows for like other genres that are less science fictiony.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean?
I mean, this one was, aside from the brown dwarf and the black hole, the scientific aspect of the psychobabble technobabble aspect of it wasn't so focused on. It was more about
Hmm.
how do they survive and how do they rely on each other to survive. And
Well, I thought there was quite a lot of technical to do with the black hole and the
right.
brown dwarf, because
Mhm.
that their survival depends on understanding what's
Right.
around them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there was a particular character introduced in this episode, um, Zanuga,
Mhm.
who I concluded was most likely an engineer, because he's at the engineering station, the same station
Mhm.
Scotty would be at in the original series if Scotty was in the show, and is wearing a
Mhm.
red shirt as well. Um, why do you think he cheers so much, like near the end of the episode, when it's showing that Uhura and Hammer survived?
I think he was relieved that maybe we'll get more of an explanation as to what his connection with Hemmer is, but I would think that his direct coworker surviving, especially one as capable as Hemmer, would be a relief. As
Mm.
somebody, in a job where, I kind of rely on my superiors for a lot of information, like that I can kind of relate to that. But yeah, I do wonder if maybe he was like just sort of playing it up to sort of add to the emotional impact of the scene. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's a connection there that we'll get later.
But I remembered, like, not only is Hammer like the chief engineer, but like during this episode, Uhura is also like in engineering technically, because she's
Right.
doing some work there.
Right. I mean,
Um,
yeah, that I think it's within her purview to be down in engineering as well at this point.
yeah, well, you see her like working on their console and stuff like that in the
Right.
original series, doing engineering
Mhm.
work.
Right.
Um, but also I thought like it may be um like philosophically sort of with Zuniga, like he knows like, oh, the technology didn't fail, being an engineer
Right.
himself. He might be relieved by that aspect.
Right. It wasn't, I don't know if it was technology that saved them because they were basically just hanging on for dear life as they were, uh
Yeah, well, even then I meant like the EV suits. They've
oh,
still been
okay,
able to
yeah.
breathe and stuff.
Right, right.
All the
Yes.
technology that goes into it.
It worked. The thing I did worked. Okay. I see that.
Uh, how many rank pips out of 5 would you give this episode?
I would give it a 5. I think it paced itself really well. I think that we got some really good character development. I think we really uh got a good sense of how Pike captains the Enterprise under pressure, and I think that's valuable for later episodes. I think that La'an's processing of her past is extremely poignant, and the little tidbit about Spock. I think everybody had a chance to shine in this, and yeah, I think it's a really solid episode.
Cool.
How about you?
I'd probably give it a -5, so I really didn't enjoy this episode. I'm joking. No, I'd give it a full 5.
Mhm.
I thought I thought it's the best episode of Strange New Worlds so far.
Mhm.
I think it's as I've said on social media and stuff like that, it is my favorite of like all 5 of the first 5 episodes of Strange New
Right.
Worlds. So I really love it. But also, yeah, I'm looking forward to next week as well. The next episode.
Absolutely. I am looking forward to this in a way that in terms of like new Trek is nice. Like I really love Prodigy as well, but with this I'm very much looking forward to next week for sure.
Cool. So on Twitter, we recently ran a poll to see like which of the episodes that have aired so far, like people have responded to, and those are the results. I thought, like, I was really surprised by how popular Memento Mori is,
Hmm.
and also like how popular the second episode was, actually.
I think Children of the Comet is also a very solid episode.
Yeah.
The way that the elements were balanced and Uhura's backstory, I think, were really great.
Cool. So, thanks very much for joining this discussion, Vanessa. Where can
Thank you for
viewers
having
see
me.
you? Where can viewers find you elsewhere on YouTube?
I am on Twitter on I Love Bad Star Trek with LUV instead of everything spelled out. And I Love Bad Star Trek also on YouTube.
Cool. And yeah, certainly recommend your channel to anyone and everyone
Thank you.
watching.
Thank you. I enjoy doing it very much.
We hope you, our viewers, have enjoyed this discussion. Let us know in the comment section what you thought about this particular episode of Strange New Worlds. And please remember to like and subscribe to this video. We'll see you next time. Track you later.